Hey geckos, coming in with another chapter in our chocolate fever book. We're ready for chapter 5, Calling Dr. Fargo. And I have a couple little friends that are going to listen to this story. And we're also reading this one from our living room fort. So let me set this down and if I don't drop it, and let's get started. Calling Dr. Fargo. In later years, Henry couldn't remember who screamed first. All he could recall was that both he and Mrs. Kimmelfarber were yelling their heads off, and that Nurse Molly Farthing was as cool as a cantaloupe. "Calm down now, both of you," she said. "Mrs. Kimmelfarber, you go and call Mrs. Green on the telephone. Tell her we're taking Henry to the city hospital." Mrs. Kimmelfarber didn't move. She just stood there with her mouth open, staring at Henry. "You scoot now," insisted Nurse Farthing in a stern tone. "Shoosh! Off with you." "And you, Henry Green," she said, as Mrs. Kimmelfarber left the room, "you are coming with me. Let us go, quietly, calmly." She took his hand, and once again, Henry noticed that it felt good and somehow made him feel better. He kept holding her cool hand as they left the school. All the way to the hospital as the taxi sped along, Henry held fast to the calm, steady hand of Nurse Molly Farthing. In fact, it wasn't until he had been checked by two different doctors and was waiting to be examined by the hospital's chief of children's medicine, Dr. Fargo, that he dared to let go. What, said Dr. Fargo as he came bounding into the examining room. He was a small, round man with a bushy white mustache and a confused look on his face. "What have we here, eh?" he said. "Boy looks like he fell in a mud puddle." He leaned down so close to Henry's nose that Henry could smell his puffy breath. It smelled like peppermints. "Didn't fall in a mud puddle, did you, lad?" "No, sir." "Didn't think so," said Dr. Fargo. "Too bad. Would have explained what these big brown spots are all over you." "Well then," he said, turning to Nurse Molly Farthing, "tell me things." "You're not going to believe this, Doctor," Nurse Farthing began as she told Dr. Fargo about the events of the morning. "I am not going to believe this," Dr. Fargo repeated when she had finished. "It's impossible. No rash in the whole history of rashes ever appeared so fast or grew so big or popped out with a noise you could hear. Impossible." "It happened," said Nurse Farthing. "So I see. Well, we'll soon get to the bottom of this, or my name's not... what is my name, by the way?" "Dr. Fargo, I believe," said Henry. "Pleased to meet you, son," said Dr. Fargo, and he shook Henry's hand. "Ought to do something about those big brown spots, though." "Yes, sir," said Henry, who was beginning to feel confused himself. Dr. Fargo took Henry to the examining table and switched on the big lamp. For a full 5 minutes, he said nothing but, and "Ha!" as he poked and prodded Henry. He looked at every big brown spot and at all the bare spots in between the brown spots. He looked with a magnifying glass and without a magnifying glass, in Henry's eyes and ears and nose and even under his tongue. Finally, he said, "I don't know any more than what I started. They look just like your typical big brown spots, except, of course, in the whole history of the civilized world, there has never been a case of big brown spots before." "I'm frightened," said Henry. "I'm Dr. Fargo," said the doctor. "That much I know. Now, what I'd like to do is get to know more about these brown spots of yours." He wet the tip of a cotton swab and brushed it gently against one of the big brown spots on Henry's right arm. "Ouch," said Henry. "Did that hurt?" "No." "Then why did you say ouch?" "Because," said Henry, "I thought it was going to hurt." "I see," said Dr. Fargo, shaking his head. He put the cotton swab into a glass jar. "Take this to the laboratory at once," he said to one of his assistants, and the man rushed out of the room. "In a few minutes we'll know more about these big brown spots of yours," the doctor said. Hands behind his back, he began to pace the room. Suddenly he stopped, his nose in the air. "Who's been eating a candy bar in my office?" he demanded. No one answered. Dr. Fargo's nose twitched from side to side as he sniffed the air. I smell candy, he said. Someone's been eating a candy bar. Just then the telephone rang, and Dr. Fargo bounded across the room to answer it. What? He said into the phone. Are you sure? His white mustache bounced up and down as Dr. Fargo sank slowly into a chair. He put the telephone down, a look of amazement on his face. Chocolate, he said. Those big brown spots are pure chocolate. Chocolate, gasped Nurse Farthing. Chocolate, exclaimed Henry Green. Chocolate, echoed Dr. Fargo's two assistants. Exactly, said Dr. Fargo. The boy, it seems, is nothing more than a walking candy bar. Here's the illustration from that chapter. Henry, all of his little brown spots and big brown spots, and the whole crew that was there with him. What would you do if you had little chocolate spots suddenly appearing on your skin? Do you think it was cool? Like snack time all the time? Or would you be a little scared? Somewhere in between, maybe? Anyway, we will read chapter 6 in Chocolate Fever tomorrow. And that chapter is called Catch That Boy. So I wonder what we're going to see happening next. Until next time.